CBS News Homeland Security correspondent Jeff Pegues is in Washington and joins us now. And Jeff, what do we know at this hour about this possible threat?
Well, law enforcement officials tell us that they are getting intelligence which suggests that al-Qaeda may be planning a strike here in the U.S. Now, the information has not been corroborated, but investigators here in the U.S. are reaching out to counterterrorism officials in those states and really across the country to ensure that they are aware of this information and they are trying to assess its intelligence. But a senior law enforcement official is telling us that this is a threat that they are taking seriously.
Election day is just 3 days away, and as the world watches to see who wins the presidency, one place where the outcome is being closely observed is Russia. Elizabeth Palmer's in Moscow, where the Russian people are not only watching two candidates battle for the White House, they're also seeing a democracy described as broken.
U.S.-Russia relations have been deteriorating over the past couple of years, and so the Kremlin and, of course, Russian citizens have a big interest in which candidate wins the White House and sets foreign policy.
A Kremlin-backed rally to celebrate Russian Unity Day drew huge crowds in Moscow. Ask the marchers which U.S. presidential candidate would be best for their country, and they're almost unanimous.
Я за Трампа. Ну пусть будет Трамп.
За Трампа.
I'm for Trump, this woman tells me, because he's for Russia.
За Россию. Благосклонно, да?
We are patriots, said another. And her friend adds, yes, we are for Trump. It's no surprise. For months, Russian state media have pumped out the Kremlin line that Clinton is bad, Trump is a straight shooter, and anyway, the U.S. election is fixed. On Russia's most watched news program, Rudolph Giuliani is featured with tales of vote rigging. And then the anchor compares what he calls ancient U.S. voting technology with Soviet-era vending machines.
State television is direct extension of the Kremlin.
Mikhail Fishman is the editor-in-chief of the Moscow Times.
What does the Kremlin want to put in Russians' heads?
There is no real democracy in the world. It doesn't work.
Because democracy threatens President Vladimir Putin. Just look at the anti-Putin demonstrations demanding democracy in 2011 after vote-rigging allegations in Russia's parliamentary elections. And when then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said she had serious concerns, the Kremlin saw it as unforgivable U.S. meddling. So for Putin to hear a U.S. candidate imply America's democracy is a sham is sweet revenge.
This will be the opportunity to show that, hey, they do the same thing. There is no difference.
And we're no worse than they are.
Yes, exactly.
A message these marchers understand perfectly. Democracy doesn't work, even in America. So join the crowd supporting President Putin.
WikiLeaks releases another batch of emails from Hillary Clinton's campaign. RT presents the next part of an exclusive interview given by Julian Assange to renowned documentary filmmaker John Pilger at Dartmouth Films. They discuss one of the most controversial leaked letters, which allegedly shows Clinton knew that the Saudi government directly funded the self-proclaimed Islamic State.
The closer it gets to the US elections, the juicier the WikiLeaks revelations become. And the man behind all this isn't shy about meting out his own judgments too. The editor of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, has spoken exclusively to veteran journalist and filmmaker John Pilger for company Dartmouth Films. They spoke here at London's Ecuadorian embassy, and in that interview, John Pilger asked Julian Assange the questions that a lot of his detractors probably want to see answered. Things like, why the vendetta against Hillary Clinton? And does he have a thing for Donald Trump?
What is WikiLeaks doing? Are they trying to put Trump in the White House?
Trump would not be permitted to win. Banks, intelligence, arms companies,
well, they all want him
beat foreign money, etc.
Yeah.
Is all united behind Hillary Clinton, and the media as well. So media owners and even journalists themselves. There's a early 2014 email from Hillary Clinton, so not so long after she left Secretary of State, to her campaign manager, John Podesta. That email, it states that ISIS is funded by Saudi Arabia and Qatar, the governments of Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Now, this is I think this is the most significant email in the whole collection.
ISIL, or ISIS, is created largely with money from the very people who are giving money to the Clinton Foundation.
Yes.
That's extraordinary.
I've just talked to you about the ongoing coup and counter-coup that is being initiated by the Clintons on the one hand and counter-coup by the FBI, the New York Police Department, and other branches of our intelligence community. The important part to remember is also that not all the information has come out with regards to Weiner and his sexting to a 15-year-old North Carolina teenager. The real issue underlying a lot of Bill Clinton's nefarious activities as well as Hillary Clinton's sexual activities is the fact that we know that both of them have been a major part and participant of what's called the Lolita Express, which is a plane owned by Mr. Jeff Epstein, a wealthy multimillionaire who flies down to the Bahamas and allows Bill Clinton and Hillary to engage in sex with minors. That is called pedophilia. And as a result of the excellent work that the New York Police Department does in tracking pedophiliacs, they also have a record of both Hillary, Bill, and other people associated with the Clintons with regard to pedophilia. So not only will she be charged with obstruction of justice, with lying to a prosecutor in the FBI, she will also be charged with pedophilia, sex with minors, and other assorted issues. Bill might be brought up again on certain charges because those charges still relate to American crime and prosecutorial issues. But I do want to inform you that we are well aware in the intelligence community of their activities that hasn't stopped. And we're not talking about one trip to the Bahamas, we're talking about a multiple of 20 or 30 trips that Bill and Hillary did take separately and together on the Lolita Express to engage in sexual activities with minors.
In an email dated June 28, 2015, performance artist Maria Abramovich wrote to Podesta's brother Tony and said, "I'm so looking forward to the spirit cooking dinner at my place. Do you think you will be able to let me know if your brother is joining?" Tony Podesta then forwarded the email to John Podesta, asking him, "Are you in NYC Thursday, July the 9th? Marina wants you to come to dinner." Here's Marina inviting Podesta directly. So what is spirit cooking? It's basically a Wiccan ceremony where blood is used to create some form of art as a sacrament to occult beliefs. This video shows Abramovich mixing together thickly congealed blood as the recipe for the painting, which is comprised of the words, "With a sharp knife cut deeply into the middle finger of your left hand, eat the pain." Spirit cooking is also an occult practice used during sex cult rituals, as explained in the book Spirit Cooking with Essential Aphrodisiac Recipes. According to Maria Abramovich, if the ritual is performed in an art gallery, it's merely art. But if the ritual is performed privately, as it was with the Podestas, then it represents an intimate spiritual ceremony.
The United Nations says that Daesh terrorists have killed hundreds of people around the Iraqi city of Mosul.
We also continue to receive reports of mass killings, including one incident on Monday when ISIL reportedly killed 50 of its own militants in the Ghazlani military base in Mosul city for alleged desertion. There are also credible reports that 180 people were killed on Wednesday in Kokjeli town in eastern Mosul, and possibly up to another 200 people were killed in Mosul city.
According to Shamdasani, the terrorists have also transported 1,600 people to Tal Afar to use them as human shields against airstrikes. She said that Daesh has told Iraqi families to hand over their children, especially boys above the age of 9. The UN spokeswoman warned that the kids may be used as child soldiers. The UN says that Daesh is holding nearly 400 Kurdish, Izadi, and Shia women in Tal Afar and has possibly killed up to 200 people in Mosul itself.
Russia's huge arsenal and mighty firepower have allowed the Assad regime to stay in power and his forces to strengthen. Nowhere has this might been felt more than in the divided city of Aleppo. Now, after a 2-week humanitarian pause, Russia is threatening to resume a full-scale bombing of Aleppo.
All attempts made by the militants in the city of Aleppo to break out have failed. The terrorists suffered heavy losses in manpower, hardware and military equipment. They've no chance to break out of the city. To avoid needless casualties, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation has announced a humanitarian pause in Aleppo on the 4th of November from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. local time. All humanitarian corridors in Aleppo previously prepared by Russia will operate for the exit of civilians and militants.
An offensive rebels launched to break the siege on their strongholds in the east is in its 6th day. They are vowing to press on with it.
We thought breaking the first lines of defense would take a long time, but with the grace of God, we broke their defenses in half the time we anticipated.
A number of Syrian rebel groups are involved in the offensive, including the Free Syrian Army, the Conquest Army, and a coalition calling itself the Aleppo Operation Room.
Lithuania has brought out a new version of its civil defence guide. It advises civilians on what to do in the event of a Russian invasion. It's a 75-page brochure. It's set to be distributed in schools and libraries and also published online in the Baltic state. Lithuanians have been told to have a strong will to resist, to make life difficult for any potential invader. So let's go through a few of the tips and the warnings being given out to the general public there and what to be aware of. First of all, seems to survive Russian aggression, Lithuanians need to know the difference between various types of Russian tanks. And if you didn't know, there's a beginner's guide to it, also about Kalashnikovs, how they vary. It's also necessary to spot mines and grenades, apparently, and to single them out. And a guide, too, in this brochure for civilians, how to become resistance fighters, how to dress, even how to sleep like a guerrilla if you're caught outside, but you've still got to carry on the good fight. There we go. There's more details there. So this is the third such brochure published in the country since the outbreak of fighting in eastern Ukraine back in 2014.
The United States says it will deploy a controversial advanced missile system in South Korea in 8 to 10 months. The announcement was made by the commander of the U.S. forces in South Korea. General Vincent Brooks said the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, also known as THAAD, would be bigger than the one currently in Guam, a U.S. island territory in the Western Pacific. Russia and China have already expressed strong objection to the deployment. The decision has also met with condemnation of Pyongyang as well as local South Koreans. Seoul and Washington agreed to deploy the system in the south after North Korea conducted a series of missile launches in the wake of its 4th nuclear test in January.
At least one person has been killed in Indonesia following violent clashes between police and hardline Muslim protesters in Jakarta. There were ugly scenes as security forces fired tear gas and water cannon in an attempt to disperse a large crowd. The violence came after a huge rally in the capital in which protesters called for the city's Christian governor to be prosecuted for blasphemy.
Jadi clear. Kalau hari ini Ahok tidak.
This protester said, "Our message is clear. If he is not declared a suspect today, we won't stop until it happens. We have already planned a 3-day movement. We urge all Muslims across Indonesia to rise up in their own region."
Kita sudah siapkan logistik sampai 3 hari.
The mass rally in Jakarta earlier on Friday saw an estimated 50,000 people march upon the presidential palace. The demonstration was triggered by accusations that the governor, who later apologized but is now under police investigation, had insulted Islam's holy book, the Quran.
Business is grinding to a complete standstill in Egypt as companies struggle to keep pace with a rapid slide in the black market value of the Egyptian pound. Factories are halting production, shops are running low on stocks, and many here seem to feel the deep impact.
Our lives are becoming miserable and we are living in a nightmare. We cannot find anything in the markets. And if we do find anything, the prices are unacceptable.
As the Egyptian government is seeking to secure a $12 billion loan from the International Monetary Fund to improve the economy, the Central Bank of Egypt has devalued its currency by 48%.
The countdown is on to the biggest pension shake-up, which will see thousands across Queensland lose some, if not all, of their entitlements. Everything will change come January the 1st, and time is running out to save your money.
Marjorie Green's your typical part pensioner. Thanks to her fortnightly payments, she doesn't go without.
I do have a house. I am able to live relatively comfortably at the moment.
That'll all change next year because Marjorie owns her home and an investment property. She'll be booted from the pension threshold.
There's probably going to be something like 90,000 Australians alone that will probably have their pension eliminated altogether, and about over 200,000 will have their pension reduced.
The Great Salt Lake is drying up fast. New photos from NASA's Earth Observatory show the body of water has reached its lowest level on record. The lake is a terminal basin, which means it's the last stop for the water flowing from rivers and streams. And for about 150 years, people have been taking more water out of the lake than what's pouring in. The observatory estimates that humans take 40% of water from rivers that's supposed to make its way into the basin. That's caused the shoreline to shrink 11 feet since 1847. But human consumption isn't the only reason for the shrinkage. The water shortage can be traced to the drought along the west coast and rising global temperatures due to climate change. And this isn't great news for Utah's economy. The lake's minerals are a key moneymaker for the state, and the lake drying up means companies don't have as much to extract and sell.
When I was young, I used to come out here with my dad.
These pictures paint an idyllic snapshot of Clinton, New Jersey's reservoirs. But recent video tells a very different story. Drought has depleted the water in all the Northeast Jersey system reservoirs, prompting a drought warning in 14 counties.
In the spring this year, it was up to the base of that concrete.
Tom Zayos has enjoyed fishing in Clinton's Round Valley Reservoir for 30 years. And has never had this much trouble just launching his boat. While Ashley Brothers and her family come here to kayak.
I was actually in shock when I pulled up.
A muddy proposition since the water levels receded.
My mother-in-law got stuck in it twice trying to get out of her kayak.
The Spruce Run Reservoir here in Clinton, New Jersey is at about 35% of its capacity. To put that into perspective, where I'm standing right now, the water should be 7 feet deep. Drought has gripped much of New Jersey since mid-June.
Precipitation in the state of New Jersey that's down about 25% compared to what we typically get annually.
Bob Martin is New Jersey's Commissioner of Environmental Protection, and he says some water needed to be moved within the system for dam repairs. But what you see is mostly a result of little to no rain. Over the last 3 months, rainfall levels are down more than 50%.
Typically when this reservoir is full, which it typically is, by the time we get to the spring, this reservoir is full. It's probably at 90 to 95%, sometimes at 100% and spilling over, but we're not there right now.
Pictured for the first time, we're getting a peek at the limestone slab where it's believed Jesus Christ's body lay after his crucifixion. Researchers from the University of Athens were allowed to access the rock for the first time in more than 400 years. RT correspondent Ashley Banks tells us why it was uncovered.
For the first time in centuries, researchers have uncovered the original surface of what is believed to be the tomb of Jesus Christ. Lifting the marble covering that has been in place for more than 460 years, archaeologists discovered the original limestone slab intact, where theologists tell us the body of Christ was laid. Now the discovery appears to mean that the location of the tomb has not shifted through time, according to those working at the site. The tomb is in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Old Jerusalem, where millions of people visit each year. The marble slab was put in place to keep visitors from removing pieces of original rock as souvenirs. Scientists had only 60 hours to study the tomb before it was resealed. They discovered the original limestone burial bed just hours before the deadline. Frederick Hubert, National Geographic's archaeologist in residence, said, quote, "I'm absolutely amazed. My knees are shaking a little bit because I wasn't expecting this. We can't say 100%, but it appears to be visible proof that the location of the tomb has not shifted through time, something that scientists and historians have wondered for decades."